The boy's voice did not carry far, but it carried far enough. "That's not your driver, sir." Harlan Whitfield, who had been 3 steps away from the open rear door of the black sedan idling in front of the Whitfield Tower, stopped without turning his head. He was holding a leather portfolio in one hand and a paper cup of coffee in the other, and for a moment the only thing that moved was the small line of steam rising from the lid. The morning was bright and clean. The street smelled of rain that had ended an hour earlier. 40 floors above him, the windows of the building that bore his name caught the light in long sheets of gold. He turned his head slowly. The boy was standing on the wide stone planter that bordered the entrance, the way children sometimes stand when they want to be seen by a particular adult and no one else. He was thin and small for his age, maybe 10, maybe 11, wearing a Navy school sweater and gray pants that had been carefully pressed but were just slightly too short at the ankles. His backpack hung from one shoulder. His other hand was gripping the strap as though he had been holding it that way for a long time before deciding to speak. "Excuse me," Harlan said. "That's not your driver." The boy did not point. He kept his hands where they were. "Your driver is the man with the gray hair and the limp, the one who always opens the door first and then puts your bag in second. That man in the car is not him." Harlan glanced toward the sedan. The driver was sitting behind the wheel with his face turned slightly away, one elbow resting on the door, the other hand on the gearshift. He was wearing a dark jacket and a chauffeur's cap pulled low. From this angle, in this light, in the 3 short seconds Harlan had to look, the man could have been anyone. The car was right. The plate was right. The hour was right. Harlan had walked toward that car at exactly this time on exactly this corner on roughly 200 mornings of his life, and not once in any of those mornings had he looked carefully at the man behind the wheel. He looked now. The driver did not turn his head. He should have. By now, a driver who had been waiting for almost 3 minutes while his passenger stood on the sidewalk talking to a child should have at least glanced in the side mirror. This driver was looking straight ahead at the empty street, very still, the kind of still a person becomes when they are listening hard and trying not to be seen listening. Harlan brought his eyes back to the boy. "What's your name, son?" "Isaiah Brooks, sir." "Isaiah." Harlan said the name slowly, the way a man does when he is buying himself a few seconds. "How do you know my driver?" "He picks me up sometimes too, sir, from the back of the building, from the loading dock where my mom works. She cleans the offices on the 38th floor. Mr. Coleman drives her home on Tuesdays and Thursdays when her shift ends late because the bus stops running. He has been doing it for 2 years. He never charges. He says my mom reminds him of his sister." Isaiah paused, and then he said the next thing more quietly. "He texted my mom this morning. He said his car wouldn't start and that a different company was sending someone for you. He said the new driver's name was Tomas. He told my mom because he said if she saw a strange car at the front of the building at 8:30, she shouldn't worry." Harlan did not move. He felt the coffee cup growing slightly heavier in his hand. "And," he said, "the driver in that car," Isaiah said, "told the doorman his name was Patrick." Harlan Whitfield had spent 31 years building a company that moved cargo across 4 continents, and in those 31 years he had developed a particular kind of stillness for moments when something important was about to happen. He used it in negotiations. He used it when a junior associate brought him bad news. He used it now. He smiled at Isaiah the way a man smiles at a child who has just shown him a drawing, set his coffee cup gently on the stone planter beside the boy, and lifted his portfolio slightly as if adjusting his grip. "Isaiah," he said quietly, "I want you to do something for me. I want you to walk back through the front doors of the building like you were going to find your mother. Don't look at the car. Don't hurry. Wave to the doorman the way you always do. Once you are inside the lobby, stand near the security desk and wait for me. Can you do that?" The boy's eyes did not waver. "Yes, sir." "Good, go now." Isaiah climbed down from the planter, adjusted the strap of his backpack, and walked toward the revolving doors at a pace so ordinary it almost made Harlan's chest ache. He raised one small hand to the doorman, a heavy older man named Garrett who had worked the front entrance of Whitfield Tower for 19 years, and Garrett raised one gloved hand back without breaking from his post. The boy disappeared into the building. The driver in the sedan did not move. Harlan turned slightly, lifted his phone to his ear as though receiving a call, and walked 3 steps toward the sedan. He did not get in. He stopped just before the rear door, frowned at his phone the way a busy man frowns when an urgent message has just come through, and said in a clear and slightly irritated voice, "I have to go back up. They need a signature before I leave. 5 minutes." He did not wait for an answer from the driver. He turned and walked unhurriedly back through the revolving doors of the building. Behind him, very faintly, he heard the soft click of a car door being unlocked from the inside. He did not turn around to confirm it. Inside the lobby, the polished floor and the high ceiling made everything feel a degree cooler than the street. Isaiah was standing exactly where Harlan had told him to stand, beside the long marble security desk, his hand still on the strap of his backpack. Garrett was at his post by the door. Behind the desk, 2 members of the morning security shift looked up as Harlan approached. They had been with the company a long time. They knew his face. They knew that he did not walk toward the security desk on an ordinary morning. "Frank," Harlan said quietly to the older of the two, "I need you to do 3 things in the next 60 seconds, and I need you to do them without raising your voice. Are you with me?" Frank Delaney straightened in his chair. "Yes, sir." "First, I need you to put the building on a soft lockdown. No alarm, no announcement, just close the side exits and put a man at the loading dock. Second, I need you to call the police, not the front desk, not the precinct line, but Lieutenant Marcia Vance directly. Her number is in the emergency book. Tell her I am asking for her personally and that there is a man in a sedan in front of my building who is impersonating my driver. Third, I need you to find Mr. Coleman. His name is Walter Coleman. He works for Hadley Car Service. I want to know where he is, and I want to know that he is safe. Do not, under any circumstances, allow anyone to leave the building who is not already in this lobby. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Frank picked up the phone. The other guard, a younger man named Pell, was already moving toward the side corridor. Harlan exhaled once slowly and turned to look at Isaiah. The boy was watching him with the same steady eyes. Harlan knelt down on one knee so that his eyes were level with the boy's. He set the leather portfolio on the floor beside him. He did not care in this moment what it cost or what was inside it. "Isaiah," he said quietly, "I need you to tell me everything you remember from the beginning, from the first thing that made you notice." The boy nodded once. He took a small breath, the kind a child takes when he has been waiting to be asked a question and has rehearsed his answer in case he ever was. "My mom got a text this morning, sir, before the sun was up. It was on her phone on the kitchen counter, and I saw it when I was getting cereal. It was from Mr. Coleman. He said his car wouldn't start and he was sorry, but he had asked the company to send Tomas instead. He said Tomas was a friend of his and that you would be in good hands. He said he would call my mom later in the day to check in." Isaiah paused. "But then 20 minutes later my mom's phone buzzed again. I saw her read it. She got real quiet. She put the phone in her pocket and she didn't tell me what it said. She just said we had to leave for the bus early. She walked me all the way to the building this morning instead of letting me ride alone, which she never does on Wednesdays because she has to be on the 38th floor by 7. Harlan listened without interrupting. "When we got to the corner," Isaiah said, "my mom looked at the front of the building for a long time before she crossed the street. She kept her hand on my shoulder. She told me to go inside through the side entrance and find her later. And then I saw the car, and I saw the man in it. And I knew right away it wasn't Mr. Coleman, because Mr. Coleman is not a young man, sir, and the man in the car was young. And when I went to the doorman to ask him about it, the doorman said the driver had introduced himself as Patrick from Hadley. And I thought that's not right either because the text said the driver's name was Tomas." Harlan felt something tighten very slowly behind his ribs. "Where is your mother now, Isaiah?" "I don't know, sir. She said she would meet me in the lobby, but she hasn't come down. I waited 15 minutes by the elevators. Then I came outside because I saw your car pull up. I thought, if my mom isn't here, somebody has to tell him." Harlan looked toward the long bank of elevators at the back of the lobby. 2 of them were on the upper floors. The third was descending. He looked back at the boy. "What is your mother's name?" "Vanessa Brooks, sir." Frank, Harlan said without turning his head, do you have eyes on Vanessa Brooks from the cleaning service? She works the 38th floor. Frank was already speaking into a handset. He listened, said something low, listened again. He looked up at Harlan. She clocked in at 6:52, sir. She has not clocked out, but the supervisor for that floor says she stepped away from her cart about 20 minutes ago to take a phone call and has not come back. Harlan's mouth went dry in a way he had not felt in many years. Pull the cameras, he said quietly. 38th floor, every angle now. Frank nodded and turned to a second monitor. Harlan looked down at Isaiah. The boy had not moved. He was standing very still, his hand still gripping the strap of his backpack, his small face composed in the way that small faces sometimes compose themselves when there is more fear inside than the face can comfortably hold. Isaiah, Harlan said gently, your mother is going to be all right. I am going to make sure of it, but I need you to stay right here with Frank until I come back. Will you do that? The boy nodded. Harlan stood up slowly, picked up his portfolio, and walked behind the security desk. Frank had brought up 4 screens. The 38th floor was divided into a long central corridor, 2 glass-walled office suites, a small break room, and a service hallway that ran behind the elevators toward a freight lift the cleaning staff used to move their carts between floors. The cameras showed all of it. The corridor was empty. The office suites were empty. The break room was empty. The service hallway was empty. Roll it back, Harlan said. 25 minutes. Frank's fingers moved across the keyboard. The timestamps in the corners of the screen spun backward. Figures appeared, walked in reverse, disappeared. At 23 minutes back, a woman appeared in the service hallway pushing a tall cleaning cart. She stopped, took her phone from her pocket, looked at the screen, and then lifted it to her ear. She listened for perhaps 30 seconds. Then her free hand rose slowly to cover her mouth. That's her, Frank said quietly. Keep going. The woman lowered her hand from her mouth, looked once down the corridor toward the elevators, and then turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction, away from the cameras, toward the freight lift. She left her cart where it stood. The cart appeared in 2 of the screens for the next 19 minutes, motionless, the small lamp on its handle still glowing. Where does the freight lift go? Harlan asked. Down to the loading dock or up to the roof, sir. Service access only. It does not stop in the lobby. Pull the loading dock cameras. Frank's hands moved again. The loading dock came up on the largest of the screens. 2 delivery vans were parked along the far wall. A man in a maintenance uniform was checking a clipboard near the bay doors. There was no sign of Vanessa Brooks. Roof cameras. The roof access door was closed. The small landing in front of it was empty. The view from the camera above the door showed nothing but gray gravel and an HVAC unit humming softly in the morning light. She didn't come out at either end, Frank said. Then she is still inside the lift or she got off on a floor between. Harlan turned to Pell, who had returned from the side corridor. Take 2 men. Start at the bottom of the freight shaft and work your way up. Open every service door. Do not under any circumstances draw a weapon unless you have to. She is a frightened woman. She is not a suspect. Pell nodded and was gone. Harlan turned back toward the front of the lobby. Through the tall glass doors he could see the sedan still idling at the curb. The driver was no longer in the same position. He had turned his head and was looking directly at the entrance of the building, his hand resting on the wheel, his other hand somewhere out of sight below the dashboard. From this distance, Harlan could not see his face clearly, but he could see the angle of attention, and the angle of attention was that of a man who had begun to understand that something on his side of the morning was no longer going according to plan. Frank, Harlan said quietly, Lieutenant Vance. Where is she? 6 minutes out, sir. She has 2 units coming in silent. She said to ask you to stay inside the lobby and to keep the boy away from the windows. Tell her I am going to keep the driver where he is. I do not want him deciding to leave before she arrives. Frank looked up. Sir, get me Garrett on the radio. Garrett's voice came through a moment later, steady as it had been for 19 years. Mr. Whitfield. Garrett, the car at the curb, the driver. I want you to walk out to him at your normal pace. Tell him I have been delayed by a phone call. Apologize for the inconvenience. Offer him a bottle of water. Do not let him see that anything is wrong. Understood, sir. And Garrett, keep your hands where he can see them. Through the tall glass doors, Harlan watched Garrett step out onto the sidewalk with the unhurried dignity of a man who had spent most of his working life standing in one place and being underestimated for it. He walked to the sedan at the pace he had always walked, raised one gloved hand in a small wave that he had given to 1,000 drivers across 2 decades, and bent slightly at the waist to speak through the lowered window. Harlan could not hear the words, but he could see the angle of the conversation. He could see the small, polite tilt of the driver's head. He could see Garrett's other hand, the one not gesturing toward the building, resting comfortably and visibly on the frame of the open window. The driver said something. Garrett nodded. Garrett pointed toward the lobby as if explaining where Harlan had gone, then mimed the universal shape of a phone call. The driver leaned back slightly. He nodded once. Garrett straightened, gave a small wave of acknowledgement, and walked back toward the doors at the same unhurried pace. When he came through the revolving door, his face was composed, but his eyes were not. "He's nervous, sir," Garrett said quietly as he passed Harlan on the way back to his post. He kept looking at the side mirror. "He has a phone face down on the passenger seat. The screen lit up twice while I was standing there. He didn't pick it up." "Did he say anything?" "He said his name was Patrick. He said the car was a Hadley vehicle, but the company decal on the dash was wrong. Hadley uses a blue circle with a white H. The decal on his dash was a green diamond. I have been opening that door for Hadley drivers for 19 years, sir. I know what the right decal looks like." Harlan nodded slowly. "Stay at your post. Do not look at the car again unless he gets out." "Yes, sir." Harlan turned and walked back to the security desk. Isaiah was still standing exactly where he had been told to stand. He had not moved. He had not looked toward the windows. He was watching Harlan with the kind of patient attention that adults often mistook for shyness, and that Harlan was beginning to understand was something else entirely. "Frank," Harlan said, "anything from Pell. He has cleared the bottom 4 service levels. He is working up, nothing yet. And Coleman. Hadley is calling his apartment now." His wife answered on the 3rd ring. She said Walter left for work at 5:40 as usual. He told her he was picking up a regular client at 6. She has not heard from him since. Harlan closed his eyes for a brief moment. He thought of Walter Coleman, a quiet man with a small silver pin in the lapel of his jacket from a service tour he had completed before Harlan was born. He thought of the way Walter always opened the rear door of the sedan with a small nod that was not quite a bow, and was not quite a greeting, and was somehow both. He thought of the woman somewhere in the freight shaft of his own building who had taken a phone call and then run. "Frank," he said, "I want a wellness check sent to Walter Coleman's home address. Right now. Not when Vance gets here. Now. Use a private security firm if you have to. I do not want to wait on a precinct line." "Yes, sir. And I want you to pull the security feed for the corner outside this building going back 2 hours. I want to know how long that sedan has been parked there, and I want to know whether anyone got out of it before Walter was supposed to arrive." Frank's hands were already moving across the keyboard. The screen shifted. The image of the sedan at the curb sharpened and then began to roll backward in time. Harlan stepped closer. He watched the morning unwind in reverse. The light dimmed. A street sweeper passed. A man walking a dog passed. A delivery cyclist passed. The sedan remained. The footage rolled back to 6:14 in the morning, and at 6:14 the sedan was already there. Frank kept rolling. At 6:09 the sedan pulled to the curb from the south end of the block, parked, and sat. The driver did not get out. He did not check his phone. He did not adjust his mirrors. He sat behind the wheel with his hands in his lap, and his face turned toward the front entrance of the building. And he sat that way for 2 hours and 21 minutes without moving, the way a man sits when he has been told to wait, and has been told that nothing matters more than being in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. 2 hours, sir," Frank said quietly. "He has been there since just after 6. Walter Coleman was supposed to pick me up at 8:25, Harlan said. "Hadley always sends Walter 40 minutes early because Walter is the kind of man who would rather wait at the curb than be 1 minute late. Whoever sent that text from Walter's phone this morning sent it knowing the exact time Walter would have been on his way." He looked at the screen again. The driver of the sedan, frozen now at 6:09, was a man somewhere in his early 30s, lean, clean-shaven, with the kind of carefully ordinary face that did not stick in the memory. Harlan had not seen him before. He was almost certain of it. Almost. Frank, run his face. Through what, sir? Through everything we have. Start with the building's visitor logs for the past 6 months, then move outward. Vendors, contractors, deliveries, anyone who has signed in at the front desk. Then run it against the public databases that the company has access to through our security contractor. I want a name. Frank's hands moved again. The face on the screen multiplied into a column of comparison candidates. Most were rejected within seconds. A handful held, then fell away. A small wheel turned in the corner of the monitor. Sir, Pell's voice came through the radio, low and urgent. I have her. 27th floor service corridor. She is in the cleaning supply room. The door was locked from the inside. She let me in when I said your name. Is she hurt? No, sir. She is shaking, but she is not hurt. She is asking about her son. Tell her son is with me and that he is safe. Bring her down through the back stairs, not the elevator. Take her to the small conference room on 3. Stay with her until I come up. Yes, sir. Harlan turned to Isaiah. He had not realized how tightly he had been holding the edge of the security desk until he let go of it. He knelt again. Your mother is safe, Isaiah. She is upstairs. A man named Pell is with her. He works for me. He is going to bring her down through the back of the building, and I am going to take you to her in a few minutes. But first I need you to be patient with me a little longer. Can you do that? The boy nodded. His shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. It was the first time since the conversation on the sidewalk that he had allowed any small piece of his body to ease. Harlan saw it and committed it quietly to memory. Sir. Frank's voice was tight. I have a match. Harlan stood. He came around the desk. The screen now showed 2 photographs side by side. On the left, the driver of the sedan as he sat at the curb this morning, his face captured in 3/4 profile through the windshield. On the right, an older photograph, slightly grainier, of the same man in a different jacket and with shorter hair, standing in a line outside what looked like a courthouse. Below the photograph was a name. Lucas Petrov, Frank read. Where is that from? A court appearance in Newark 18 months ago. He was a witness, not a defendant. The case was a kidnapping for ransom. Harlan looked at the photograph for a long moment. The man on the screen had the unremarkable face of someone who had learned, early in life, that being remembered was a kind of liability. He looked at the camera the way a man looks at a wall. What was the case? Harlan asked. Frank's fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up the docket. The defendants were 3 men who had abducted the adult son of a real estate developer in Bergen County. They held him in a warehouse for 11 days before negotiating a payment. The son was returned alive. The defendants were convicted. Petrov testified for the prosecution in exchange for immunity. The file says he was a low-level participant who turned on the others when the federal charges came down. Where has he been since? There is nothing in the public record after the trial. No employment, no address, no court appearances. He went quiet. He did not go quiet, Harlan said. He went professional. He looked once more at the screen, then turned toward the front of the lobby. The sedan was still there. Lucas Petrov was still in it. Through the glass doors, Harlan could see that the man's posture had changed slightly in the last few minutes. His shoulders had drifted forward. His head was tilted toward the phone on the passenger seat. He was a man waiting for an instruction that was not arriving on schedule. Frank, how far out is Lieutenant Vance? 2 minutes. Tell her not to come down our street. Tell her to position 1 unit at the north corner and 1 at the south corner. I do not want him to see police cars coming and decide to run before they can box him in. When she is in position, I want her to call me. I will signal her when to move. Yes, sir. Harlan stepped away from the desk. He walked to Isaiah and rested one hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. I am going to take you to your mother in just a moment. There is one last thing I have to do. Stay with Frank. Yes, sir. Harlan walked toward the revolving doors. Garrett straightened slightly as he approached. Sir. I am going to walk out, Garrett. I am going to walk to the car. I am not going to get in. I am going to stand at the rear door and I am going to speak to him through the window. I want you to stay exactly where you are. If he reaches for anything below the dashboard, I want you to come through that door and get me out of the way. Do you understand? Sir, please, let the lieutenant handle this when she arrives. She will. But she is 2 minutes out and he has been sitting at that curb for 2 hours, and a man who has been sitting at a curb for 2 hours waiting to take another man somewhere he will not come back from does not deserve another 2 minutes of patience from me. I am not going to do anything foolish. I am going to keep him talking until the units are in position. That is all. Garrett looked at him for a long second. Then he nodded once. Harlan pushed through the revolving door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The morning had warmed slightly. The street was nearly empty. He walked at his ordinary pace, his portfolio in one hand, his coat unbuttoned, the way he had walked toward 200 mornings of waiting cars. When he reached the rear door, he did not open it. He stood beside it and looked through the open window into the front of the sedan. "Patrick," he said pleasantly. The driver's head turned. The face Harlan had seen on the security monitor was now 3 feet away from him. The eyes were lighter than the photograph had suggested, a pale and very steady gray. "Mr. Whitfield." The voice was soft and unhurried. "Everything all right, sir?" "Everything is fine," Harlan said. He rested one hand lightly on the frame of the open window, the way a man does when he is about to lean in and share a confidence with someone he knows. "I am sorry to keep you waiting. There has been a small situation upstairs. One of our compliance officers needs me to sign a document before I leave for the meeting. I told him 5 minutes. It is going to be closer to 10. Of course, sir. Have you eaten breakfast, Patrick?" The driver hesitated just for a beat. "I have, sir, thank you." "Good. Garrett is going to bring you out a coffee anyway. He gets bored when there are no cars to open doors for. Indulge him." Harlan smiled. The smile he used was the one he had perfected in 30 years of boardrooms, the smile that did not reach the corners of his eyes but that no one ever noticed did not reach the corners of his eyes. "How long have you been with Hadley?" 3 months, sir." "And what did you do before?" Another small hesitation. Smaller this time. The driver was getting his rhythm back. "Private security, sir, for a family in Westchester. The contract ended." "That sounds like steady work." "Why the change?" "They moved overseas, sir. They didn't need me anymore." Harlan looked thoughtful, the way a man does when he is trying to remember whether he knows someone in common. "Whose family was it, if you don't mind my asking? Westchester is a small world." The pale gray eyes moved, just barely, away from Harlan's face toward the front entrance of the building, then back. "The Hendersons, sir." "The Hendersons? I don't know them." "What does the father do?" "Finance, sir." "Most of them do." Harlan laughed softly. The driver laughed too. The laugh did not reach the corners of his eyes either. "Listen, Patrick, while I have you here. Walter Coleman has been driving me for a long time. Did Hadley tell you why he isn't with me this morning?" "Car trouble, sir. They said his vehicle wouldn't start." "And he is at home, then?" "I believe so, sir." "That is good. I will give him a call later. He worries when his routine changes." Harlan let his hand slip a fraction along the window frame as though preparing to step back. Then he paused as if a small thing had just occurred to him. "Patrick, one more thing. You said the company decal on your dash is green. Is that a new logo? I thought Hadley used the blue circle." The driver did not look at the dashboard. He did not need to. His left hand, the one that had been resting on the wheel, drifted a few inches lower and out of sight. His right hand stayed where it was. His face stayed where it was. Only his eyes moved very briefly to Harlan's right hand on the window frame. "It is new, sir. They rebranded last month." "Ah, that is the trouble with rebranding. Half the cars look like they belong to someone else." A small black SUV pulled around the north corner at the far end of the block and stopped against the curb. A second one pulled around the south corner 10 seconds later. Neither used a siren. Neither used a light. Two men in plain dark jackets stepped out of the first vehicle and began walking toward the sedan along the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street, not hurrying, not looking at the car. From the south, a man and a woman in matching jackets did the same. Lieutenant Marcia Vance had positioned her people exactly the way Harlan had asked her to. The driver's eyes flicked once toward the north end of the block, then once toward the south. The pale gray went very still. "Patrick," Harlan said softly, "I want you to keep both of your hands where I can see them." The driver looked at him. "Step away from the car, sir," he said quietly. Now, Harlan did not step away. He did not move at all. He kept his hand on the frame of the open window and his eyes on the pale gray eyes of the man in the driver's seat, and he spoke in the same conversational voice he had been using since he walked out of the building. "Patrick, there are 8 officers within 50 feet of this car. 2 of them are behind you. 2 of them are in front of you. 4 of them are across the street. If you reach for whatever is under that dashboard, you will not finish the motion. I am telling you this not because I am threatening you. I am telling you this because I would prefer that you live through the next 60 seconds. I would prefer that a court hear what you have to say. I would prefer that the people who sent you here be the ones who answer for what they plan to do this morning. Do you understand me?" The driver did not answer. His chest had begun to move very slowly, in the controlled way of a man who is counting his breaths to keep his hands still. From the corner of his eye, Harlan saw the 2 officers from the north end of the block step off the curb and begin to cross the street at an unhurried diagonal. From the south, the other 2 had done the same. The sedan was, without anyone having raised a voice, surrounded. "Patrick," Harlan said again, more quietly. "Hands on the wheel, both of them, slowly." For a long moment nothing happened. The driver's lighter hand, the one that had drifted toward whatever was below the dashboard, hovered there as if weighing something. Then very slowly it rose. Both hands came to rest on the top of the steering wheel. The pale gray eyes did not leave Harlan's face. "There," Harlan said. "Thank you." The officers reached the car. Lieutenant Vance herself was the woman from the south end of the block. She came to the driver's window with her hand resting easily on the holster at her hip, and her eyes already reading the inside of the car the way a person reads a page they have read many times before. Her voice was calm and almost bored. "Sir, I need you to turn off the engine. I need you to drop the keys onto the pavement through the window. Then I need you to open the door from the outside with your left hand, keeping your right hand on the wheel." The driver did as he was told. The engine quieted. The keys clinked softly on the asphalt. The door opened. He was lifted out without violence, turned and pressed gently against the side of the car, while another officer cuffed his hands behind his back. Underneath the dashboard, where his left hand had been drifting, Vance's partner found a small handgun resting in a magnetic holster bolted to the underside of the steering column. He photographed it before he touched it. Then he removed it carefully, cleared the chamber, and placed it in a plastic bag. Harlan stepped back from the car. He felt, for the first time since he had set his coffee on the stone planter beside Isaiah, the small tremor in his right hand that had been waiting all morning for permission to arrive. He let it arrive. He set the portfolio on the sidewalk and pressed his palm briefly against his thigh until the tremor passed. Vance walked over to him. She was a small woman with a face that had been weathered by 24 years of work and a pair of eyes that had been weathered by none of it. She looked at Harlan the way she looked at all civilians who had just helped her do her job, which is to say with a mixture of professional gratitude and personal exasperation. "Mr. Whitfield, Lieutenant, that was a foolish thing to do." "It was." "Was the boy yours?" "No." "Whose?" "He belongs to a woman named Vanessa Brooks. She works on the 38th floor of this building. She is upstairs in a conference room. I would like to take him to her now." Vance looked at him for a long moment, and the exasperation in her eyes softened into something quieter. "Go," she said. "I will be up in 20 minutes. I will need statements from all 3 of you, but they can wait that long." Harlan picked up his portfolio and walked back through the revolving doors into the lobby. Isaiah was still standing beside the security desk, his hand still on the strap of his backpack. He had not looked toward the windows. He had not asked Frank a single question. Harlan crossed the lobby and held out his hand. "Come with me, Isaiah." The boy took his hand. It was the first time anyone in that building had ever held Harlan Whitfield's hand, and the first time in many years that Harlan had let his own hand be held. They walked together toward the elevators, past the polished floor and the high ceiling and the long bank of brass mailboxes, and Harlan understood as he walked that something in the architecture of his ordinary morning had been permanently rearranged. Vanessa Brooks was waiting for them in the small conference room on the 3rd floor. She stood when the door opened and her hand went to her mouth in the same way it had on the security footage. And then she was kneeling on the carpet with her son in her arms. And for almost a full minute, no one in the room spoke. Pell stood quietly by the door. Harlan stood quietly by the window. The morning light moved across the small table and across the woman and the boy and across the floor and out again. When Vanessa finally looked up, her face was wet but her voice was steady. "Walter," she said. "Have you found Walter?" Harlan had been waiting for the question. He had hoped it would come later. "The private security firm reached his apartment 7 minutes ago," he said gently. "He was unconscious in his kitchen. He is being taken to Mercy General right now. He is breathing on his own. They believe he was given something in his coffee. The early indication is that he will recover." Vanessa closed her eyes. Isaiah pressed his forehead against her shoulder. "He is a good man," she said quietly. "He picked up Isaiah from school for me when I had to work the overnight shift. He didn't ask for anything, he just did it." "I know," Harlan said. "I am going to make sure he is taken care of, whatever he needs, for as long as he needs it. You have my word." She nodded, and she did not say anything else, because there was nothing else that needed to be said in that particular moment. In the weeks that followed, the case unwound the way these cases do, in pieces slowly, with the pale gray-eyed man giving up the names of the people who had paid him in exchange for a reduced sentence, and those names leading to a small group of investors who had been quietly losing a great deal of money in a shipping deal with Whitfield Logistics, and who had decided, in the way that desperate men sometimes decide, that the simplest solution to a contract dispute was the removal of the man who held the controlling vote. 3 of them were indicted within the month. The 4th was indicted by the end of the year. None of them ever saw the inside of Harlan's office again. Walter Coleman came back to work in the spring. Harlan met him at the curb on the first morning and helped him into the back seat of his own sedan, and Walter argued about it for 3 blocks before allowing himself to be driven home. Vanessa Brooks accepted a new position in the building, off the cleaning roster and into the operations office, with a salary that let her stop working overnight shifts. Isaiah continued at his school, and then at a better one, and Harlan paid for every year of it without ever once calling it a gift. A child with steady eyes and a careful voice had saved a powerful man's life one ordinary Wednesday morning, and the powerful man spent the rest of his life remembering that the smallest voices are sometimes the only ones telling the truth.